PTE Reorder Paragraph is the third reading task which often scares the test takers, which is obvious if you see these questions for the first time. But don't worry, in this video we are going to cover the complete understanding and strategies for the reorder paragraph questions. Hello and welcome to the Edutrainex learning channel, the pioneer in PT training. So let's firstly understand what this task is. A paragraph is broken down into sentences and presented to you in a jumbled order. You need to put them in the correct order. The paragraph is not very big, around 150 words, with 4 to 5 sentences. This task judges your ability to understand the organization and coherence of a text. This task assesses only your reading skills, and partial credit also applies here, which means that you can get partial points if you only get some of the sentences in the correct order. I'll explain the scoring shortly, but before that, be mindful that many people get stuck on these questions. So we recommend only to spend maximum of 2 minutes per reorder paragraph questions if you want to complete the entire reading section. Let me show you how this task actually looks in the exam. Layout. The instructions which tells you that you need to reorder the sentences in the correct order is at the top, and then you have two panels, the left and the right side. The left panel has the sentences in the random order and the right one is empty, because this is where you need to drag and drop your answers in the correct order. Now, scoring in the reorder paragraph questions is not very simple. Allow me to explain it with examples. There is no negative marking and you get 1 point for each correct sequence, not the correct position. So on the screen you can see the questions that has 5 sentences. If you get all 5 of them in the correct order, you get 4 full points. See the arrow that shows the correct sequences of these 5 sentences. So there are 4 sequences in total. However, if you just make one error by missing one sentence, you lose 2 points there. So see the second scenario, because with one error you are breaking 2 sequences here between sentence 1, 2 and 3. If you place sentence 1, 2 and 3 in the wrong order, which is the third scenario, so you only get sentences 4 and 5 in the correct order, which is only one sequence right, and you get only 1 point there. And lastly, if you don't get any sequences right, you get 0 points. So look closely, you might think sentence 1 and sentence 5 are in the correct position, but you are not awarded marks for the correct positions, but actually sequences. I hope these examples make things more clear to you now. Now comes the interesting part, which is how to approach and solve the reorder paragraph questions, the certain steps that we need to follow. And also, we need an understanding of paragraph structures, coherence, and how we use grammar to find clues. Remember, each PT Reorder paragraph sentence will have some clues to indicate how it is linked with the other sentences. So this is what we need to find out. Step 1 is to find a sentence that is completely independent, or also called as topic sentence. This sentence will stand out among others as this will not have any reference to any other sentences. In simple words, if you read this sentence alone, it will make sense to you. If it doesn't, then it's not the independent topic sentence. So every well-written paragraph has a topic sentence that introduces the paragraph and doesn't refer to other sentences. Look at the paragraph shown on the screen and try to determine the independent sentence here. Use grammar to help you. The independent sentence will not have any pronouns referring to a noun in any other sentence, but sometimes it may still start with a pronoun. I'll explain this detail in the next slide. So let's examine the sentences one by one. The first one starts with this amazing discovery. Ask yourself, which amazing discovery is it talking about? So how can this be an independent sentence when it is referring to something which is not discussed here? Cross this one. Let's cross the easy ones out first. So in the last sentence, I see it starts with but in 1985. So but is a conjunction or a transition word, never used in an independent sentence. So let's cross one out as well. The third sentence, therefore pure energy and so on. Again, therefore is a transition word and normally used to conclude something. For example, if I say today I woke up late, therefore I got late to work. So cross this one out as well. Now look at the fourth one, which says it is normally assumed to form. In this case, it is a pronoun and it refers to something which is assumed to form 60% of the entire energy content. So it's not independent. Cross this one out. Now the second sentence, which is the only one left, let's examine it closely. You might say it starts with it, which is again a pronoun, so we don't have any independent sentences. But read it closely and see what it says. It says, it has been known since 1910 that black holes expand at a regular pace. So this is a way of saying, which I'll discuss next, how a sentence begins with a pronoun and still be an independent sentence. It has been known since 1910, meaning that something we are aware of since 1910. But what is it? The later part of the sentence says the black holes expand at a regular pace. So this is what has been known. You see how examining the sentences can help you figure out the topic sentence. Now sometimes we say it's a wonderful day or it's been a long time since we met. So in these sentences, notice that they begin with it, which is a pronoun. So don't rely blindly on grammar alone. There are exceptions like this which you need to be aware of and figure out after looking closely into it. So in this example, you were easily able to filter out at least 3 sentences using grammar. But you still need to use your due diligence to figure out the independent topic sentence. The next, extremely important aspect you need to know for the reorder paragraph questions is the knowledge of subject, verb, object. If you get a difficult question, it may seem to you that 2 to 3 sentences are independent. In those cases, the subject, verb, object knowledge can definitely help you to find the connection. So what are subjects, verbs, and objects? Let's take an example. Tom plays football. So Tom, which is a noun, is actually doing some action. So this is the subject of the sentence. Plays, which is an action, is the verb. Verbs are the action words, always. And then football. It's on the receiver's end. It receives the action of the subject or the noun. So there are other types of objects as well, but I'm not going too deep because I just wanted to give you an idea about what objects mean. See the picture on the screen. The subject is colored blue, verbs in white, and objects in red. See the connections, which shows subject to subject, or subject to object, or object to subject, and object to object relationships. Even verb to verb relationships also exist. Let me show you some examples so you can understand what I mean here. Example of object to subject relationship. Newton invented the calculus. It is now widely taught in universities. So calculus is the object in the first sentence, and in the second sentence it is referred by it, a pronoun, in the subject. Second example is of subject to subject relationship. Newton invented the calculus. He taught at the University of Oxford. So Newton and he in the 2 sentences remain the subject in both of them. The third one is Newton invented the calculus. Tesla used calculus heavily. Can you guess the relationship here? It's object to object. So calculus remains the object in both the sentences. And finally, an example of subject to object relationship. Newton invented calculus. Trigonometry was also invented by him. So Newton is the subject of the first sentence but becomes the object of the second one, him, as the second sentence is in passive voice. So do you see these relationships here? the second sentences are clearly referring to the first one using either pronouns or repeating the nouns. So these are the clues that are going to help you in the reorder paragraph questions. Now the next step, which is the step number 2, to solve the reorder paragraph questions, is to identify the next sequence of sentences after you have identified the topic sentence. The subject-verb-object relationship discussed earlier is certainly going to help you, and at the same time, you must also understand about what is paragraph coherence. Coherence is something about smoothness in writing. Well-written sentences would always have information flow from one sentence to the other one very smoothly using connections. Coherence is also a marking criteria in PTE writing tasks. So if you understand this well, you can also improve your writing scores. If you still don't get this, let me elaborate it a bit. So when you explain something new to someone, how do you start? You start with a background or introductory statement, which is your independent sentence. And then you start talking deep, referring back to the things discussed previously. So this is your body. And then finally, you say something to conclude your speech. So this smooth flow of information is coherence. And every PTE reorder paragraph question will definitely have it. You just need to find the clues. So what helps us in finding those clues? They are repetition of key nouns or keywords, pronouns, transition words, and lastly, the logical sequence of paragraph structures. Some people also use the trial and error approach, but this is very time consuming and not always recommended. I'm going deep now, and I'll cover each of these elements with examples. The first one is repetition of nouns. Many a times, there is a deliberate repetition of nouns to emphasize the importance of the main points. See the example we discussed before. Do you see the word black holes has been repeated 4 times, almost in every sentence? So you definitely know that the topic of the paragraph is black holes. Sometimes you may also see synonyms getting repeated instead of the original word. Look at the example. Surroundings and environments are used synonymously in subsequent sentences. The next one is pronouns, which I think is heavily used in the PTE reorder paragraph questions. And if you master this relation, you can definitely boost your scores in this task. So pronouns, as we all know, substitute nouns, but still keep the focus on the subject. Also, if we don't use pronouns, our sentences will get very clumsy. Have a look at the first example, which doesn't use any pronouns. The manager said that the manager is in rush. The manager was getting late to pick up the manager's wife from the airport, but the manager did not know the way to the airport. Ew, that just doesn't sound right. Let's now use pronouns. The manager said that he is in a rush. He was getting late to pick his wife from the airport, but he did not know the way to the airport. See how the next sentences refer back to the subject of the first sentence, which is the manager. Now see the question on the screen about the black holes. See the purple and the red color combinations. They, in the second sentence, refers back to black holes in the first sentence. So clearly, the second sentence will come after the first one. The next one is pure energy and it. So again, it will come after the sentence that talks about pure energy, because it refers back to pure energy. Let's also explore the importance of transition words. They are also called as linking words and help the sentences to connect in a smooth manner. But, however, moreover, firstly are some of the examples. Now look at the paragraph and you can see that there are 2 transition words used here, but and therefore. Therefore, hence, thus, these words are often used to conclude. So definitely, the sentence will be our concluding sentence. So we found the topic sentence earlier, which is, it has been known since 1910 that black holes expand at a regular pace. Now the second sentence has 2 clues. Why is it the second sentence in the sequence? I'm sure you can also guess. The first one is the word they, which is the pronoun referring back to black holes. And the second one is but. But is always used to contrast something. In this case, if you read and understand the meaning of the sentences, the first one is saying that the black holes expand at a regular pace, but the second one is saying that they are expanding faster. So clearly contrasting the first one. So it will be our second sentence. And this was newly found by the scientists. Look at the third sentence, which again has a pronoun this, as it talks about this amazing discovery. What amazing discovery? It is referring to the new proof that the scientists found in 1985. Now the fourth sentence in the sequence we have already discussed. It starts with the pronoun it. So what is it in this case? Bingo. It refers to the pure energy discussed in the previous sentence. And lastly, the fifth and the final sentence starts with therefore and kind of provides a summary or a conclusion of the paragraph. Hope this clears a lot of things for you guys now. Let me also cover the use of indefinite and definite articles, which is also used quite often in the PTE Reorder Paragraph questions. A is the indefinite article, which introduces the noun, and the is the definite article. So when we talk about something specific, you will often see questions using these articles in the exam. It's definitely heavily used. Look at the examples on the screen. I have a car. The car is blue in color. He lives in a house. The house is close to my school. You see, the sentences with indefinite articles will always precede or come before the sentences with definite articles referring back to the same noun. Now, I'm going to give you the bonus trick and show you some popular paragraph structures which are often seen in the real PTE test. Believe me, if you know about these logical sequences of paragraphs, you are one step ahead in your preparation. So the first one is chronology, in which the sentences are arranged date-wise or in a chronological order. The earliest date will come first and subsequent date will follow. Be careful when you have dates in BC and AD. The next is process. This style of paragraph describes the flow or a process. So it will have certain steps describing the flow. The next one is order of importance. In this type of paragraphs, the order is from the most important to the least important. And the last one is compare and contrast. So this style will firstly compare two sides with similarities and then contrast the differences. Time to do some practice questions. The first one is chronology type. Remember, in the exam, it won't say the type of the paragraph. You need to figure that out yourself. See if you have some dates or eras mentioned in the question. I will give you 30-second pause here, but if you need more time, pause the video and then try the question yourself. But remember not to take too long. So step 1 is finding the independent sentence. Eliminate the ones which can't be an independent sentence or a topic sentence. Let's examine the options one by one. Option A starts with a transition word, then, so it can't be independent. Also, it uses a pronoun, then he worked for a short time. So let's cross this one out. Option B again starts with a pronoun, he gained realistic experience. What is he referring to? We don't know that yet. So this can't be our independent sentence. How about option C? It says with the help of partners to finance and market his ideas, Edison developed a range of electrical and so on in the early 1900s. It definitely sounds independent. So what do we do now? Now, we use the knowledge of paragraph structures here, which is chronology in this case, and if you see the other sentences, there are references to the previous dates as well. So it doesn't follow the chronological order, and hence can't be our topic sentence. Option D again begins with he moved to the United States. So a pronoun is used there. Can't be our first sentence. So the only sentence that we are left with is option E. Read it. Edison received an education in engineering and physics from Denmark in the 1860s. Now this one clearly sounds like the topic sentence as it is introducing the topic. So this is our first sentence. What is the second one? Let's find all the other dates in the sentences and arrange them in the ascending order. Be mindful that not all the sentences will have dates. So you need to use the other clues to figure that out. So the other dates mentioned here are 1870 in option B, 1900s in C, and 1894 in option D. So B has the next date that comes after 1860s and definitely looks like our second sentence. But what about option A? It doesn't have a date. So we need to figure out where that will fit. It talks about Edison trying to strike his own business. So which other sentence is connected to this one? It's a bit difficult to work out what comes before it. But if you see the option C closely, it mentions that with the help of partners to finance his ideas, so this one can definitely come after option A and also has a date of 1900s. So A and C will come together. And this is why A can't be our second sentence. Now read the option B carefully, which says, he gained realistic experience. So gaining realistic experience is done by someone after finishing their college. Also, the dates from 1860s to 1870s are in the perfect order. The first sentence said 1860s and this one says 1870s. And no other dates mentioned in the passage has dates that comes before 1870. Also, it uses a pronoun in the beginning that points to Edison in the first sentence. So B will be our second sentence. Option D can't be our second sentence because it has a later date of 1894. Now, we already know that A and C will come together as we just discussed. What about option D? Where will that fit in? Again, see the date D talks about he moved to the US in 1894 and C talks about early 1900s, which comes after 1894 as we have already established. So 1894 definitely comes before 1900s and that makes D as our third sentence in the sequence. And as we have already figured that A and C will come together, so the next sentences are A followed by C. So this completes our practice question number 1. The next practice question is describing a flow or a process. Again, 30-second pause before we begin. Pause the video if you need longer. Right. So which one is the topic sentence that gives you a clue about background or sounds like an introductory sentence? Read the option A. After a long time, the cloud condensed. Now, if you remember the indefinite and definite articles we discussed earlier, watch this closely again. The cloud in option A can't make it an independent sentence. Also, look at option C over here. It talks about a cloud. So a cloud will definitely come before the cloud. So let's cross option A here. Cross out option B here as well, as B sounds like a conclusion, saying this is how Ice Age arrived. Also, this is a pronoun, so this can't be our independent sentence. Check the option C. It uses it as a pronoun. As it hit the earth. What hit the earth? So it can't be our independent sentence again. That leaves us with option D and E. Let's look at option E first. Again, we use the knowledge of definite and indefinite articles here. It says the cloud instantly blocked the sun. So this option should come after option C, which says a cloud. So that leaves us with option D as the first sentence. And also the second reason is that describing a process of how the dinosaurs went extinct. Clearly, option D talks about the beginning, how scientists believed that meteor caused the extinction of dinosaurs. Now let's find the second sentence. Try to find in the remaining sentence, is there any reference back to the first one? Only option C has a pronoun in it, as it hit the earth. Now this it is referring to the meteor in the first sentence. So the second sentence is option C, which also follows a logical sequence. What happens after step 1? So as the meteor hit the earth, what happened? As the meteor hit the earth, a dense cloud formed around the earth. So now we are going to use the relation a cloud and the cloud to find our third sentence. If you look closely, both option E and A has the cloud in them. But if you read it deeply, E talks about the cloud instantly blocked the sun, and option A talks about after a long time the cloud condensed. So just use your common sense here. Which one should come first? Instantly or after a long time? Of course instantly. So E will be our third sentence, and option A will logically follow it, as we are still talking about the cloud. Now the last sentence is option B, which is a concluding sentence about how this event caused ice age. Great, so we have completed your second practice question. How do you feel about it now? Does the repetition of nouns, use of pronouns, usage of indefinite and definite articles and transition word make sense to you now? You may feel, yeah, now I'm able to use those words a little bit to find the connections, but at least to some extent definitely. And with practice, you will get better. Let's do the practice number 3, which is order of importance. Most important to least important. Pausing again for 30 seconds here. So hope you went through the options. Which one is the independent topic sentence? Going through all the options again, let's cross out which ones can't be independent. Option A looks independent. Option B again looks independent. Option C not independent, as it says the next most important thing. Option D again not independent because it starts with a transition word nonetheless. Option E starts with a transition word again, fortunately, so not independent. Now let's come back to option A and B, which we were not sure which one will be the first one because both look independent to us. Now let's do a bit more analysis. Option B should be our first sentence, according to me. Because why? Firstly, it sounds like an introductory statement, sets a tone for the paragraph. And secondly, as per the order of importance, it is talking about the most important thing in life, which is money. And option A looks like a logical sequence here, because the first sentence talks about money, and this one highlights how much an average American earns every year. It can't be option C, as it talks about the next important thing, which is joy. And option D talks about accomplish both in life, referring to both money and happiness. And option E also talks about both. But we haven't talked about joy or happiness yet. So, can we have more details about it yet? So, how can we have more details when we haven't talked about it? So, the second sentence is option A. Now, we move on to the next important thing in life, which is joy or happiness. So, note the usage of synonyms here for happiness and joy. So, option C looks like the next one in the sequence. Again, D and E can't be our third sentence here because we need to introduce happiness first before talking about it. So C will be our third sentence. Now between option D and E, read them first. Option E says, fortunately, happiness doesn't require money. And D says, nonetheless, only a handful accomplish both. So both here is a pronoun that refers to money and happiness, discussed in option E. So this makes E as our fourth sentence and D as the last one. Also, option D definitely sounds like a conclusive sentence. Feeling more confident now? With using the clues like transition words and pronouns in the paragraphs, you can see how you can use those clues to quickly solve those questions. Let's do the last question, which is on compare and contrast. So I'm pausing here again for 30 seconds and have a look at the question. Okay, so let's now look at the sentences. Remember, we need to compare the similarities first and then contrast about it. Again, let's cross out the sentences that can't be independent. Let's look at the options one by one. Option A says, scientists call this process. This is a pronoun referring to something we don't know yet. So definitely not independent. Crossing it out. Option B starts with a transition word, contrastingly. So again not independent. Option C says, there is a key difference between whales and fishes living in the ocean. Definitely sounds independent. Let's keep it aside. Option D starts with thus, a transition word often used to conclude or summarize something. So not independent. What about option E? It says, all the fishes have gills that are used to extract the dissolved oxygen in the ocean. Definitely a strong contender as an independent topic sentence. It is definitely independent, but the question here is it the topic sentence? I don't think so, because option C talks about a key difference between the whales and fishes, and option E is basically elaborating what the difference is. So option C will be our topic sentence, and as I mentioned just now, option E is elaborating that difference, so it is logically the next in sequence. So E will be our second sentence. Now which one will be the third sentence? Option A and B definitely looks like strong contenders. Now let's try to connect the dots here. The second sentence describes how fishes use the gills to breathe in water. And option A says scientists call this process as aquatic respiration. Again, notice this pronoun. This is referring to the process discussed just before that. So logically speaking, option A becomes our third sentence. Now the comparison is done. Out of the remaining two sentences, we need something which contrasts on this ability. So earlier, the comparison was that both whales and fishes live in water, and now contrasting that whales don't have the ability to breathe underwater. So you see the clues here? Option B will become our fourth sentence here. And lastly, option D is the only one remaining, so that will be our last sentence. And also, it has thus, a transition word which is often used to conclude something. So that completes our set of practice questions. Now, I wanted to talk to you about the trial and error method. I have seen on the internet that it has been suggested as a strategy to the test takers. Well, this is not a strategy to me at all. I would say only use this in the worst case. If you encounter sentences in which nothing is making sense to you, only in that scenario you should go for the trial and error method. But at least give it a little try using the information that I shared just now before you decide to use the trial and error method. And lastly, have a read at the some of the frequently asked questions about reorder paragraph.